Sage Veda Vyasa had already achieved the impossible. He had synthesized the 4 Vedas and compiled the 1,800-page Mahabharata. Yet, sitting on the banks of the Saraswati, he found himself paralyzed by a deep melancholy. When the wandering sage Narada arrived, he identified a specific void in Vyasa's work. Vyasa had mapped the intricacies of cosmic law and intellectual philosophy, but he had yet to document the experience of a soul in direct emotional contact with the divine. Narada's instruction was direct. Vyasa needed to produce a work centered entirely on Param Prem Rupa, the state of supreme love. This command resulted in the Bhagavata Purana, a text that abandoned abstract logic for the language of the heart. Vyasa was a man who possessed every intellectual answer, but felt no connection to the source. His internal crisis mirrored a larger spiritual stagnation that was beginning to settle over the entire subcontinent. In this era, spiritual practice in India was defined by karma marga, a system of complex, high-stakes Vedic rituals. Participation required significant wealth and the presence of specialized priests, creating a barrier between the common person and the divine. The primary intellectual alternative was Shankaracharya's Advaita, or non-dualism. While it was a triumph of logic, its focus on the impersonal, abstract nature of reality was difficult for anyone outside of elite academic circles to utilize. If you lacked the money for expensive rituals or the education to debate high philosophy, you were effectively a spectator in your own spiritual tradition. History shows that when a religious system consolidates power into a monopoly of the wealthy and the educated, it creates the exact pressure needed for a grassroots pivot. This pivot to devotion didn't emerge in a vacuum. Its genetic code had been surfacing in the Sanskrit tradition for centuries. We see the first glimmers in hymns of the Rig Veda, evolving into the explicit concept of divine grace within the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. The Bhagavad Gita accelerated this evolution when Lord Krishna gave the instruction to set aside formal duties and simply surrender. These ancient texts provided the philosophical framework, but it was the Bhagavata Purana that finally translated these ideas into a mass movement. The Bhagavata Purana functioned as a manual for bypassing the gatekeepers of the era. It provided specific tools for the common person to reach the divine without a priest. This list, the 9 sadhanas, illustrates the shift. It prioritized accessible actions like Shravan, simply listening, and Kirtan, singing, over the performance of difficult, expensive fire sacrifices. To bridge the gap to the divine, the text introduced the 5 bhavas, relational attitudes using familiar emotions. A person could relate to the Creator as a servant in Dasya, a close friend in Sakya, a protective parent in Vatsalya, or a lover in Madhurya. Defining progress through universal emotions made the path to the divine independent of a person's caste, their accumulated wealth, or level of education. These ideas moved out of the manuscripts and through the geography of India, spreading from the temple cultures of the south into the north. Because this path required no specialized training or social status, it naturally began to dissolve the rigid caste and gender hierarchies that had dominated spiritual life. We see the results in communities where people from across the social spectrum gathered to sing and eat together in the dirt. In these spaces, the only metric of a person's standing was the sincerity of their devotion. The Bhakti movement shifted the definition of spiritual worth from ritual purity to the quality of one's heart, physically rewriting the social boundaries of the subcontinent. This focus on unmediated love proved so influential that it crossed philosophical lines, shaping the poetry of figures like Kabir, who applied the same devotional intensity to a formless, universal God. It even resonated with the Islamic Sufi tradition. As this text notes, the 2 movements found common ground in the pursuit of ishq hakiki, the ultimate true love of the divine. The movement even forced traditional scholars like Ramanuja to adapt, leading them to build new theological defenses to account for this massive wave of emotion. A single pivot toward emotional accessibility sent a series of expanding ripples through every layer of Indian society. While intellect and duty are necessary to map the universe, The legacy of the Bhakti movement is the proof that when spirituality moves from the head to the heart, it gains the power to cross any boundary that human history can construct.